Prayer is one of the most powerful weapons that God has given us to stand strong in the face of challenging circumstances. In this tutorial, I want to lay out how to pray in challenging circumstances, what our heart posture should be, and making sure that we are utilizing prayer as our first resort instead of our last. Hello, welcome to the Ivy Hop Academy YouTube channel. If this is your first time with us, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell below so that you can stay up to date whenever we put out a new video. Have you ever heard the phrase, there is no atheist in a foxhole? Basically what that is saying is, hey, when we come under fire, when we are in the midst of battle, we are far more prone to recognize God and to understand that we need God to help us through the challenge. So then the next logical step is, what is that person doing in the foxhole? And when they're coming under fire from the enemy, the first thing that they're going to do is pray. There is something inside of us that is programmed to call out, to reach out to God in times of crisis. And so we need to embrace that. And we need to embrace that as our first resort, not our last resort. You know, there's sometimes I've heard people say, well, all we can do now is pray, as if like that's the last step in the equation. I really don't believe that's the case. I believe that the moment we face the emergency, the moment we face the crisis or challenging situation, our first response needs to be to get on our knees and cry out to God. When Paul was in prison, he was writing to the Philippian church, and this is the kind of emphasis he placed on their prayers. Philippians chapter 4, verse 19 and 20 says, "For I know that through your prayers and God's provision of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, that what has happened to me will turn out for my deliverance. I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage so that now, as always, Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death." Did you catch that? Paul was talking about the prayers that were being made for him and how he believed that that was going to affect his deliverance, him getting out of prison. But there's also another thing that we can't gloss over in this section. He also says, whether by life or by death, he wanted to glorify God. And so it's important to remember in the face of our circumstances that even if we don't experience the deliverance that we think is the right way or that we think we should have, to recognize like, hey, this is all about Jesus. And so regardless if I'm delivered the way that I want to be or God has a different plan in this, I am going to set my heart to glorify God. Now, how can God ask us to do this? We might say like, hey, you don't understand this situation. You don't understand what I'm going through right now. And in some sense, I see that, but the Bible actually says something a little bit different here. If we look at Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15 and 16, "For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin. Therefore, let us draw near with confidence to the throne of grace, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need." All right, so when Jesus, through the incarnation, when he experienced life here on earth, he was tempted the same way that we are. So what is our main temptation in times of emergency, in times of crisis, in times of tribulation? Our main temptation is to fall into fear. It is to fall into a place of anxiety. And so what is the remedy to that? God shares it with us right here, to draw near to him, recognizing that, okay, Jesus, you've been tempted in this way. You've been tempted to be fearful and to be anxious in this situation, but you were able to get through it through faith. And so I'm going to press into that. I'm not going to press into the narrative of being cowardly and falling back into fear. I'm going to press into the example that you laid for me and stand strong in faith and come boldly to your throne, recognizing that it's you who's going to get me through this. There is no self-help talk strategy. There's nothing else except for the Spirit of God that is going to get us through these situations. And finally, I think that we need to recover a proper perspective in prayer. And this is what I mean by that. Psalms chapter 8, verse 3 and 4 says, "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them." God set the stars in the sky. Now, those who live in a city might not understand the grandness of this, but go out to the country sometime and where there's no lights, just look at the stars and just see the magnificent beauty and realize that that's only one millionth of what we can actually, what we see is the actual span of the universe. There's so much that we can't see with our naked eye. So understanding our perspective in this and really the power that God has. He set the stars in the sky. He created the earth. He created you and me. And so instead of coming to him as like, oh Lord, I'm not sure if you can do this, but maybe you would help me in the situation. No, like he can do anything. And so coming to him in that place of faith and giving him that credit, giving him that understanding that, hey, you are in control. You can affect the situation. I'm going to stand in a place of faith in my prayers, realizing that my prayers combined with your spirit have the power to change my circumstances.